The call came in at 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening. From a number Rachel had known for 15 years. Saved in her phone simply as Sarah, her husband's younger sister, the maid of honor at her wedding. Sarah did not say hello.
Rachel, I need you to sit down.
6 words, on a Sunday in November, that ended the life Rachel thought she was living. This is Rachel, 39 years old, a primary school deputy head in a market town outside York. 2 children, Beatrice, 10, and Oliver, 7. A modest semi-detached on a tree-lined road, an Audi estate she had not chosen, a husband who had been, by every measurable standard, the sort of man other women's mothers asked about with a particular kind of polite envy. Daniel was 42. Senior partner at a regional accountancy firm. Captain of the Sunday five-a-side. The kind of husband who remembered anniversaries, brought back pastries from Saturday morning errands, took the children to the cinema on the 3rd weekend of every month so Rachel could have what he called, with what she had thought was tenderness, your time. On Sunday evening, Rachel had been folding the children's school uniforms. Daniel was upstairs giving Oliver his bath. The house smelled of the lasagna she had made for the week ahead. The kettle had just clicked off. Then the phone rang. And Sarah, who had not called Rachel on a Sunday evening in 8 years of having Sarah's number, said the 6 words that did not stop ringing in Rachel's ears for the next 4 months.
Rachel, I need you to sit down.
I remember asking, quite calmly, what's happened? Is it your mother? Is it Daniel? And Sarah said no. She said no one was hurt. She said the next thing she had to tell me would be worse.
A 2024 longitudinal study by the Institute for Family Research at King's College London, drawing on interviews with 11,000 respondents whose marriages had ended after the disclosure of infidelity, identified a phenomenon the researchers named complicit silence. In 37% of cases, at least one member of the cheating partner's family had known for more than 6 months before the betrayed partner found out. In 9% of cases, the entire immediate family had known. The most common reason given for the silence, by mothers, fathers, siblings, adult children, was not malice. It was something the researchers described as loyalty inertia. A reluctance to disrupt. A belief that someone else would handle it. A hope, often expressed in retrospect with what the interviews recorded as a considerable shame, that the affair would simply end on its own. The second finding is the one that shaped Rachel's understanding of what had happened in her in-laws' home for a year and a half. When the silence was eventually broken, it was almost never broken by the people closest to the cheating partner. In 62% of cases, it was broken by the youngest sibling. Sarah was the youngest of 4. She was 34. She had been carrying, by her own later admission, 18 months of a secret that did not belong to her. And on a Sunday in November, she stopped carrying it. Rachel and Daniel had met in 2010 at a charity quiz night in Leeds. Rachel had been the one to suggest the team name, Quisley Bears, over the strenuous objection of her colleagues. Daniel, whose firm was sponsoring the event, had been seated at the next table. He had leaned across at the interval and asked, with the particular dry confidence she would later come to associate with him, whether they took mercenaries. They were married in May 2013. A small ceremony in Daniel's parents' Yorkshire village. Sarah, who had been 22 then, just out of art school, had given a speech about her brother that Rachel still kept on a memory stick in the kitchen drawer. Beatrice was born in 2015. Oliver in 2018. The Yorkshire village became a regular fixture. Daniel's parents hosted Sunday lunches every fortnight. Daniel's 2 older brothers came with their wives. The cousins played in the garden. Sarah brought elaborate desserts she had taken cooking classes specifically to learn. The marriage, in Rachel's account, was steady. Not effervescent. Not haunted. Daniel was, in her phrase, consistently kind. He remembered things. He listened. He took on the household admin she found tedious. When Beatrice had been ill at 3 with what turned out to be a long viral infection, he had been the one to sleep in her room for 6 nights running. Rachel had no reason, none she could identify, in the months before November, to suspect anything. In retrospect, she would say, the only thing she could think of was that Daniel had begun, around 18 months earlier, to leave the house for runs that lasted exactly 1 hour and 12 minutes. Not 1 hour. Not an hour and a half. 1 hour and 12 minutes, 3 times a week, with what she had assumed was the precision of a man training for something. He was not training for anything. Sarah, on the phone, did not give Rachel the information all at once. She gave it, Rachel would later realize, in the way you might give bad news to someone you cared about, in pieces small enough to be absorbed.
I have known something for a long time. I should have told you a long time ago. I am sorry. Rachel, I am so sorry.
Rachel said, because she could not yet think of anything else. Sarah, what is it?
Daniel has been seeing someone. For a while. I don't know how long. I know it's been at least a year. I know it's still happening. I'm so sorry.
Rachel asked, in what she would describe later as a voice that did not sound like her own. Who else knew? Sarah was quiet for several seconds.
Mom knows. She's known longer than me. She told me 8 months ago. She made me promise not to tell. She said it would pass.
Rachel set down the laundry she had been folding, which she remembered later because she had still been holding the cuff of one of Beatrice's school cardigans, and she walked, very calmly, into the downstairs cloakroom and closed the door. She asked Sarah whether her brothers, Daniel's 2 older brothers, also knew.
I don't know about James. I think Stephen knows. He hasn't said anything to me. But I think he knows.
She asked, finally, the question she did not yet know she was strong enough to hear answered.
Who is she?
Sarah told her. The woman's name was Catherine Holloway. She was 37. She worked in the same firm as Daniel. She had joined the firm 2 years earlier as a senior auditor. Rachel had met her once, at a Christmas function the previous December, where Catherine had been wearing a green dress and had, Rachel now remembered, asked her with what Rachel had taken to be normal politeness about the children. Sarah had learned about it 8 months earlier because Daniel and Catherine had been spotted by Sarah's husband Greg at a hotel in Harrogate, on what was supposed to have been Daniel's fishing weekend with his brother Stephen. Greg had told Sarah. Sarah had told her mother. Her mother had told her, in the conservatory of her parents' house in the Yorkshire village, that this was a family matter and would be dealt with by the family. That she was not to involve Rachel. That Rachel had 2 small children and a job she loved, and the affair would, in her mother's words, burn itself out. It had not burned itself out. In the 8 months between Sarah being told and Sarah picking up the phone on a Sunday in November, the affair had become more involved, not less. Sarah had begun to see Catherine's name on her brother's phone when he laid it face up at family lunches. She had seen, on one occasion, a hotel reservation in his email that was visible because Beatrice had been playing with his open laptop. On that Sunday, Sarah had attended her parents' usual fortnightly lunch. Catherine's name had come up in a private conversation between her mother and her older brother Stephen. Sarah had heard the phrase, "They need a flat in town." She had walked back into the dining room where Daniel was helping Beatrice cut up her roast potatoes and watched her brother be a father in front of her, and she had decided, on the drive home, that she could not carry it for 1 more week. Rachel sat in the downstairs cloakroom for 14 minutes after the call ended. She remembered the 14 minutes precisely because she watched the timestamp on her phone change. At 9:21 she heard Daniel call her name from the landing. Oliver was out of the bath. At 9:24 she heard Daniel come halfway down the stairs and call again. At 9:27 she heard him approach the cloakroom door.
Rachel? Are you all right? Oliver wants you to read the dinosaur book.
She said, through the door, that she would be up in a moment. She gave Oliver his story. She did the voices for the Stegosaurus and the small protective Triceratops. She kissed his forehead. She turned off the light. She walked into the bedroom where Daniel was sitting on the edge of the bed, taking off his socks, and she said, in a voice that she described later as having come from a stranger who had been hiding inside her for 18 months.
Catherine Holloway.
He looked up. Rachel said, later, that she would remember his face for the rest of her life, not because of what she saw on it, but because of what she did not see. She did not see surprise. She did not see denial. She did not see the panicked recalibration of a man being caught. She saw, for less than half a second, relief. He said her name. He said the words "I can explain." He said the words "it's not what," and then he stopped, because he had heard himself, and he could not continue. Rachel did not raise her voice. She asked him 3 questions, in the order she had decided on while sitting in the cloakroom.
How long?
16 months.
Has she been in this house?
No.
Does your mother know?
He did not answer immediately. When he did, he answered the question she had not asked, the one she had not been strong enough to ask first.
Everyone knows, Rachel.
Daniel slept that night on the sofa downstairs. Rachel did not sleep at all. At 5 a.m. she went into the kitchen and made a cup of tea she did not drink, and she sat at the table where she had eaten Sunday dinner with her in-laws every fortnight for 11 years, and she made a list. At the top of the list, in her own handwriting, she wrote for names: Margaret, Frank, James, Stephen, Daniel's mother, Daniel's father, Daniel's older brothers. Beneath each name, she made 2 columns. Knew and didn't tell me. She wrote Margaret's name first because she knew, with a certainty that surprised her, that Margaret had been the architect. Margaret was a retired GP. She was sharp, controlled, fiercely protective of her children in a way Rachel had always considered a virtue. Margaret had stood at her son's wedding and welcomed Rachel into the family with what had felt, at the time, like a benediction. Frank, Daniel's father, was a quieter man. A retired estate surveyor. Sarah had said her father had not been told. Rachel was not sure she believed Sarah. She wrote his name with a question mark. Stephen, the older brother, the one Daniel had been supposedly fishing with on the Harrogate weekend, had clearly been complicit in providing cover. Rachel could not yet bring herself to think about what Stephen's wife Hannah, whom she had taken on a spa weekend the previous February, might or might not have known. At 6 a.m. she made breakfast for the children. At 7 a.m. she walked them to the school gate. At 7:45 she returned to the house and told Daniel, who was sitting on the sofa where he had not slept either, that he had until that evening to leave.
Rachel, please. Please. I'll do anything. I'll end it. Please. Don't decide tonight. Please don't decide this tonight.
She told him she had decided 2 hours ago, in the kitchen, when she had written his mother's name at the top of a list. She told him this was not about Catherine. At 10 a.m. that morning, Rachel drove the 17 miles to her mother-in-law's village. She did not call ahead. She knocked on the door of the house where she had spent every fortnightly Sunday for over a decade, and when Margaret opened it, wearing the navy cardigan she always wore on Mondays, Rachel did not say good morning.
8 months, Margaret.
Margaret stepped back into the hallway. Rachel did not go inside. She stood on the doorstep, in the November cold, and she said the things she had written in her head on the drive over.
You let me come to your house. You let me bring my children to your house. You let me sit at your table, and you let me thank you for the lamb, and you knew. You knew what your son was doing, and you knew I did not know, and you decided that the easier thing for everyone was for me to keep not knowing.
Margaret tried, in the way Margaret tried everything, with the tone of a woman who had spent her professional life delivering difficult news to patients. She said she had been waiting for the right moment. She said she had thought it would resolve. She said, and Rachel would remember this phrase for the rest of her life, that she had been trying to protect everyone.
You were protecting your son, Margaret. Say it.
Margaret did not say it. Rachel turned, walked back to her car, and drove home. Rachel did not shout that week. She did not throw anything. She did not, contrary to what Daniel later told the family therapist they were briefly required to attend, go to pieces. She did 3 things. First, she called the school where she worked and asked for a fortnight of compassionate leave. She did not explain why. The head teacher, who had been her colleague for 9 years, said only, "Rachel, take a month." Second, she made an appointment with the family solicitor she and Daniel had used 3 years earlier when they had updated their wills. She instructed the solicitor, a woman named Helen Carter, to begin proceedings for divorce on grounds of adultery. She also instructed her to draft a letter, which Helen drafted in the language Helen would have used for a hostile commercial counterparty, requesting that Daniel's family, by name, all 4 of them, refrain from contact with Rachel and the children except through Helen's office. Margaret, Frank, James, Stephen. The letter was sent on the Wednesday. Third, she called Sarah. She called Sarah at 3 o'clock on the Thursday afternoon, from the kitchen, while Daniel was at the office collecting his things.
Sarah, I want you to know that I do not put you in the same category as the others. I want you to know that what you did on Sunday, I know what it cost you. I know what your mother will say to you. I know what it will mean for your place in that family. I want you to know that I know.
Rachel.
But I cannot have you in my life right now. I cannot. The children cannot see you while they are still seeing, while they are still in the middle of this. They will not understand the difference, and I cannot ask them to. I am sorry. Maybe in a year. Maybe in 2. I don't know. I am sorry.
Sarah said she understood. They did not speak again for 14 months. Margaret wrote Rachel a letter, 3 weeks into the separation, that arrived in a cream envelope with the second-class stamp Margaret always used. The letter was 4 pages long. It was, in tone, the letter of a woman who had been told, in language she was not used to receiving from a daughter-in-law, that she had been weighed in a balance she had not known existed and had been found wanting. In the letter Margaret made 3 arguments. She said that families were complicated. She said that women of her generation had been taught to keep marriages together, and that she had been doing what she had been raised to do. She said, and this was the line Rachel folded the letter at, that she hoped, in time, Rachel would understand that she had been doing her best for the family as a whole. Rachel did not respond to the letter. She placed it, unopened beyond the first reading, in the bottom drawer of the kitchen dresser, behind the children's old artwork and a stack of birthday cards. It is, as far as Rachel knows, still there. Frank, Daniel's father, sent her a separate letter 2 weeks later. His letter was 1 paragraph long. It said only that he was sorry. That he had been told the previous Tuesday, the day after Rachel's confrontation, and had not known until then. That he was, in the only sentence Rachel kept from any communication that came out of that house, ashamed of his wife and ashamed of his son. Rachel kept Frank's letter. Frank died of pneumonia in March, 4 months later. Rachel attended the funeral. She sat at the back of the church. She did not speak to Margaret. She did not speak to Daniel, who was at that point living in a serviced flat in Leeds and had begun, through Helen, to negotiate the financial settlement that would, in the end, leave Rachel and the children in the house. After the service, in the village hall, Sarah's youngest child, a 4-year-old named Iris, walked up to Rachel and asked, quite simply, where Beatrice was. Rachel told her Beatrice was at home. She did not say that Beatrice had not been allowed to come. On the drive back to York, Rachel pulled over at a service station and cried for the first time since the Sunday in November. Not for Daniel. Not for Margaret. For the small girl who had asked a question to which there was no fair answer. Daniel and Catherine did not, in the end, stay together. The relationship that had been carried out for 16 months in the architecture of a hidden life did not survive its first 3 months in daylight. Catherine moved firms. Daniel was passed over for the senior partnership he had been on track for. He took an offer at a smaller firm in Sheffield. He sees the children every other weekend. He pays maintenance on time. He has not, to date, asked Rachel to consider reconciliation. Margaret has not seen the children since the November of the disclosure. The legal letter from Helen Carter is, Rachel has been told by James, Daniel's older brother, who eventually wrote her his own letter, kept in a frame on Margaret's writing desk. The framing was Margaret's idea. Sarah and Rachel reconnected 14 months after the call. Sarah had left her job, separated briefly from Greg, and reconciled with him on the condition that they move out of the village. She and Greg now live in Whitby. Rachel and the children spent 4 days there last August. Beatrice, who is now 11, asked Sarah on the second evening why they had not seen each other for so long. Sarah told her the truth, in a version a child could hold. Rachel sat in the next room and listened. Rachel does not say she has forgiven Daniel. She does not say she has forgiven Margaret. She does not say either word. What she says, when asked, and she is rarely asked, because the people in her life now mostly do not know, is that she has built a different life. That she is the deputy head at her school. That Beatrice is in year 7 and has discovered she is good at hockey. That Oliver wants to be a marine biologist this month and a vet next month. That she runs, every morning at 6, for 1 hour and 12 minutes, on a route that is hers and is not Daniel's. She does not say that she chose the duration as a small private joke at her own expense. She does not need to. If you have been listening to this story and you have known something, for a long time, that does not belong to you, about someone in your family, or someone you love, this is what Rachel would say to you. She would say that the silence does not protect anyone. She would say that the person you think you are protecting is not the person you are protecting. She would say that the cost of the silence is paid, in the end, not by the person who is doing the betraying, and not by the person who is keeping the secret, but by the person who is being left to live a life that is not the life they think they are living. She would say, quietly, because Rachel says everything quietly now, that the kindest thing Sarah ever did for her was to pick up the